Hey, what is up, mortals? Welcome to part 6 season 2 of What If Izuku Had a Villain Quirk. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So, we begin. Izuku gratefully accepted the rather long list from his teacher, eyes glancing down on each entry. He analyzed the possibilities and experience he could gain from each one, until a particular one caught his eye. He felt extremely confused and wary at the name Endeavor Hero Agency on his list. The boy gulped as he quickly walked over to Todoroki, pointing out the agency to his friend. The dual-colored eyes narrowed in deep thought. This makes no sense. Why would the old man want to give you an internship? No offense to you, Midoriya, of course. It's just my father doesn't really recruit anyone. The male thought back to what could possibly lead the Todoroki patriarch to offer an internship to Midoriya. Wait, this had something to do with what I said, doesn't it? Damn it. He probably heard me talking about how you helped me use my fire and thinks he can get you to make me listen to him. It sounds all too like him to do that. A look of cold fury enters the son of Endeavor's eyes. Several students noticed this and were quick to avoid the death stare he was giving to nothing in particular. Suddenly, they dimmed as Shoto clearly began to plan something. I suppose that you could be a buffer though. Someone to help keep him off my back for just a little. He turned to his jungle-haired friend who attempted to protest, saying that there were other options that could be better. Of course, this was dismissed as the peppermint-haired boy reminded Izuku that, while he loathed his sperm donor, he was still technically one of the best heroes in Japan. After several seconds of stammering, the Viridian-eyed teen just rolled his eyes and, very reluctantly, signed his name down for the Endeavor Hero Agency. In return for his friend's agreement to work with him, Todoroki offered forward a very small smile. The two got up with Momo, who had also figured who she wished to intern with, to hand in their sheets to the teachers so that they could send their acceptances to the pro heroes in charge of the agency. They exited the building together, parting ways at the gate. The excitement each one felt, even for a certain dual-colored one, was near palpable. They could not wait for tomorrow. Shoto especially could not wait to see how his father would react to his new buffer. It was the morning that the students would finally begin their internships, and within the next few hours, they all were on board a train with Aizawa. Each had their hero costumes that they had all dearly missed. Their homeroom teacher warned them to behave in front of their respective pro heroes, shooting looks at certain students. He sighed heavily as he turned them loose into the station, each pupil seeking out which train they had to take. Izuku briefly caught the gaze of Ada and instantly analyzed the rather odd look in his eyes. He decided to just make note of it and check in on the mail later. He boarded the train that would take him and his heterochromatic friend closest to Endeavor's agency. The ride was silent for the most part, with a very small amount of tension in the air. The amount seemed to increase before reaching a small peak as they finally reached the 30-story building of the No. 2 Pro Heroes Agency. Shoto strolled in without hesitation, ignoring most of the sidekicks or other workers who politely greeted him. Midoriya could feel the stares on him as he walked with his friend, clearly curious at who he was. The duo finally came to a stop as they came before a towering, flaming figure. The pro hero Endeavor was right in front of them. The man's turquoise eyes briefly glanced towards the shorter of the duo, before returning to his son. It's good to see you back, Shoto. I see your classmate and my new intern has chosen to accompany you. The imposing figure chose to ignore the soft snort from his son. Come quickly then. You cannot afford to lose any time in a hero agency. The dual-quirked boy walked ahead to go to his father's office. Just as Midoriya was about to join him, he was pulled to the side by the head of the Todoroki family. Now that Shoto is no longer around, let me tell you why I offered you an internship. I heard that you had a part in helping my son finally realize he needs to use his fire. Viridian eyes did their best not to glare at the man. I expect that you'll have a positive influence in his training while interning for me. And don't worry, while the main reason I brought you here was to assist my son, I also saw some slight use for you as a sidekick for him. The fact he had just received a compliment, despite it being rather backhanded, shocked the green-haired student as he was ushered into the office with his classmate. He gave them a rundown on what he planned on doing over the course of the internship. Starting today, it was a training routine that would be conducted in the area within the building. When the word training left the man's lips, Izuku expected to be treated more as a living training dummy than an actual trainee. He was half right in his assumption. The male was left to his own devices to battle against his fellow UA student as his father focused solely on correcting his form, attacks, and defenses. At least with the flaming hero busy, he could run through the exercises Midnight had planned for him. They were all centered around trying to bring forth anger while using his quirk, allowing for the crimson gas to appear once more. After he had mastered that, they would move on to other emotions, ensuring to test all of them out. The exercises also unearthed a small weakness in his neurotoxin. The chemicals in each gas were slightly altered by his own hormones caused by his emotion, and the formulas didn't work together all that well. Rather than producing what one would assume would be a dual hallucination, it really just muddled itself together. The one bright side was it could be used for a temporary daze effect against opponents for a less crippling after effect while sparring. This daze didn't linger for the same amount of time as one pure gas would, not sticking for more than a minute or two. The training continued on for several hours before the hero finally relented and allowed it to end. The sheer amount of exhaustion that the Viridian-eyed intern felt was ridiculous. The apathetic adult simply told them to go rest and expect to be in Hasu tomorrow. He had picked up on the hero killer Stain's tracks and wanted to be the one to finally bring him in. Needless to say, Midoriya didn't exactly get the most restful of sleep after hearing about their plans. The next day was an early morning training session to allow for a brief period to recuperate before heading out to Hasu. Both students from UA were dressed in their hero uniforms. Izuku fiddled with the lab coat of his costume a bit as they approached the city. The sun had already set by the time they had finally arrived, and what they saw was utter mayhem. They saw people running and screaming from a certain part of the city. Immediately, he ordered his green-haired intern to stay back and help civilians while he and his son assisted in the fight against the familiar monsters in Hasu. Unable to argue, he just nodded and took off to help guide civilians away from the danger. Just as the crowd started to thin, he heard a sharp cry of pain and started running. He sprinted towards the source of the sound, hearing it cut off before a yell caught his ear. Visible confusion was on his face as he reached ever closer to the epicenter of the cries. He turns the corner just in time to see the hero killer slice a wound into Ida's chest and lick the blade. Izuku quickly sent a map to his location, signaling that he needed immediate assistance. The intern was nowhere near foolish enough to think he would be able to detain the villain alone, even with his quirk. The jungle-haired male let loose a concentrated blast of his fear toxin towards Stain, who dodges it quickly. The boy quickly runs over to his friend and presses a gas mask into his hands. "Here, wear this, Ida. I have to make sure you're safe before I fully utilize my quirk." The blue-haired boy nodded weakly as he donned it. "Just sit tight, all right. I'll do my best to keep you safe." He turned to see the murderous villain staring warily at his airborne toxin. The boy lets loose another wave of it, forcing the villain skywards. "I saw you giving that mask to that boy. This gas of yours is clearly dangerous." The eyes of the villain gained a vicious gleam. "But I won't be leaving here while my target is still ripe for the taking." The man took a breath before diving at Izuku, who dodged with a blast of vapor that threw him back. The alley's visibility began to suffer as more and more of the gas started to fill it. Stain hopped as high as he could to take another breath. This caught the eye of the student responsible for the alley's new colors, and he let out a stream right towards the murderer. It just glanced, hitting him directly, and he knew that Stain had inhaled enough to be feeling the effects. The problem was keeping him busy until he did. The hero killer clearly knew this as well and attacked with a new viciousness, finally landing a cut on Midoriya's arm and paralyzing the boy, rather than ending his life. The man nodded before beginning to search for Ada, ready to deliver a killing blow, when large tongues of flame lashed out from the entrance and flinged away Stain. The gas instantly began to rise as the air quickly heated up, lifting the miasma of green smoke. The blazing attack knocked the villain away, annoying him further. Just as he was surely about to strike, Izuku's toxin kicked in and he began to panic. Clearly, the man wasn't the type to scream in fear, but rather to slowly spiral down into a hysterical panic that would eventually end with him unconscious from hyperventilation. The Viridian-eyed teen slumped down as he let go of a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Shoto, you are the best friend ever, and if I ever tell you otherwise, I'm lying." Once he was finally calmed down, he quickly moved to check Ida. The blue-haired boy was losing blood at a rather quick rate. The hero student grabbed his phone and sent out a call for the police and paramedics to come, asking Shoto to create an ice cage to properly contain Stain. They could not take the chance of the villainous vigilante awakening from his fear-induced sleep. The ambulance was still a ways off due to the ongoing battle in Hasu between the pros and Namu. As a result, the forest-haired teen was forced to provide rudimentary first aid as he was on call with the paramedics. Tenya had, for the most part, stopped bleeding. The Ingenium legacy was still very pale and was going in and out of consciousness the entire time. At last, the ambulance had finally arrived, accompanied by Endeavor himself. The tall teen was loaded into the back of the ambulance as his two saviors were interrogated over what had happened here. The police explained that, while taking down Stain was impressive, they would still be in trouble for using their quirks without authorization. However, they were all to be admitted to the hospital with Ida to take care of any wounds they managed to obtain, mentally, physically, or otherwise. They would send in the police chief to talk to them about that fact later. Enji didn't look pleased, but he relented and allowed them to be driven to Hasu. After a few hours, the boys were visited by Chief Tsuragami, who explained to them the case. Shoto was quick to argue that, without using their quirks, their classmate would be dead and Stain would still be free. After a moment of deliberation, he agreed to allow them to be pardoned of the charges if they allowed for the credit to be passed on to Endeavor. An audible greeting of teeth came from the youngest Todoroki as he reluctantly agreed with his two classmates. The three teenagers exchanged looks between each other, the green-haired one clearly having something to say. A beat passed before he sighed. We all still need to rest. He turned a burning emerald eye towards his bespectacled acquaintance, but rest assured, I will be thoroughly questioning what the hell you were thinking when pursuing the hero killer. That can wait for a while. The eyes of the engine-legged adolescent portrayed a look of both humility and gratefulness as he laid back to rest. The jungle-haired boy shared a look with his dual-colored friend before settling into the hospital bed and dozing off as well. They would need the rest, because they would be right back at training in the morning. Training that would be necessary in the coming days. For the capture of Stain marked a change in the dangerous villain underbelly. A change that was not a positive one for the heroes. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in the story thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes deep into the facts and lore of a wide variety of anime. It's sure to expand your weeb knowledge for all kinds of series guaranteed. On top of that, we have a third channel called We The Celestials Naruto What Ifs. It's what we do on this channel already but in the vast world and lore of Naruto. Go check it out if you're in the mood for some jutsu action. Secondly, on behalf of We The Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We The Celestials, then I would like to extend out an invitation to join the team. The only caveat being we only accept members 16 years and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. Our Discord is an all-around fantastic place to be, whether you're a fan or looking to join our band of misfits. We're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video. So, thank you all for watching, and have a great day.